Hello, Imaginers, and Happy New Year. It is the first full week of January. And if you're like me, you've been thinking about what you want to set maybe as a resolution, some goals you want to set for the new year, some things that you want to continue from last year, and perhaps some small steps that you want to take to the career and life that you imagined. So today I want to walk you through the process that I use with both my clients and in my own life to create goals, both for my life in general and then also for the next year. This is actually a two-part video. Next week, I'm going to be walking you through steps and the process for creating 30-day mini goals. Because what I know for sure is that our brains want to stay where we are. They find it safe. They think that it's threat-free. And so there's a lot of urges, a lot of pull to stay where you are. And we oftentimes, as humans, the beginning of the year, we get excited, we feel motivated, we feel optimistic, and we create these massive goals for the short term. And then thoughts come along that say things like, you don't really want to do that. That sounds way too hard. And so we don't find a way to close the gap between the life that we have and the life that we want using mini goals. And mini goals are the way that I have found will get you a quick win. Mini goals help you feel like you can knock the goal out of the park. And that is actually how we create movement and progress, momentum, and even confidence in moving our lives forward. So stay tuned next week for how to create those mini goals. It'll help you get to the bigger goals that I'm going to be talking about today. So again, this is the process I use in my own life and with my clients. This is really what started as a foundational game changer for me and creating and moving toward the life that I really imagined for myself. So again, if you're like me, there is a life, a career, an evolutionary version of the life that you have now that you really want, but you probably started working, moving slowly to that. You face some challenges, oftentimes with our brain. You try to use willpower, which we unfortunately always run out of. And then you decided to just scrap the whole thing and stay where you are. And that is how most of us are living our lives. And what I want you to know is that that is an evolutionary, I call it glitch in our brain that is left over from trying to stay safe, trying to avoid pain, seek pleasure, ultimately keep us alive. And by knowing that, we can have awareness, which helps so much, but also we can start to hack our brain to overcome that glitch and move to, again, the life and career that we really want. So the process that I use is basically based on going to the end. If you've ever heard of a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, you might recognize this approach. But it's basically the idea that if we start with the end and work backwards, then we know what the steps are because we can access our higher brain. If we try to stand where we are today, early part of January, and look ahead, our brain will oftentimes revert into primal lower brain, which again only wants to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and be efficient. And there's nothing about creating goals and trying to figure out how to achieve them that is efficient. It's somewhat painful and it's oftentimes not pleasant. Because again, our lower brain is evaluating, trying to do something different in our lives and is telling us that's going to take a lot of work, right? But we know as humans, when we feel the most alive is when we evolve. And so again, I want to walk you through this process that has really helped me continue to stay in higher brain while all of our long-term goodness, best interests live, and help to overcome the primal part of our brain that says, let's just stay on the couch and binge some really fun new TV and, ideally have snack food. So again, this is starting with the end. Outcome planning is sort of the way that I describe it with my clients. And the idea is simply, what do you want to be able to say at the end of your life? And it's amazing when we start to distill, what do I want to say at the end of my life? How beautiful long-term best interests sort of come into our awareness. I think about, sitting on my front porch at the end of my life and the things that I want to be able to say. And if you think about, there's a lot of research and many surveys out there, people's regrets at the end of their life and what they had wished they had done. It was something around really living the life they wanted to, right? Versus the life that they thought they should, or the path that they were already on. And that is not just our career purpose, but also relationships, travel, all of the things that maybe, you aren't pursuing. So again, if we think about what do we want to say at the end of our life, it usually becomes really clear. We want to have contributed in some way. We want to have had meaningful relationships. We want to be, for most of us, healthy and strong. We want to have continued to evolve. So for me, and again, most of my clients, this falls into these categories. And this is what I usually encourage my clients to kind of start with. What are the things you want to say at the end of your life around these areas? So number one, you can see as purpose. And I call purpose anything that you feel like you were put on this earth to do. For many of us in traditional society, we call that career. But I think that purpose is a higher calling, and your career may not align with your purpose, or it may align with your purpose. Most of my clients who come to me, their career doesn't align with their purpose. They know that there's this urge for something else. And so part of the work that I do is help them uncover it and then create a plan to go get it, including overcoming that lower part of the brain, which again is always going to try and stop you. But we have many ways that we can hack that. The second one is health. You often hear, if we don't have our health, we don't have anything. I'm actually going to be walking you through a mini health goal for the next 30 days in the part 2 of the session next week, because that tends to be a focus for the beginning of the year for so many of us. We want to kind of reset our health. And then the third one is something around something greater than us, whatever you want to call sort of that spiritual, whether you call it universe or God or whatever you call it. But again, the connection to something greater. For me, my spirituality is based in so much of the natural world. And that's when I feel sort of closest to my spiritual faith. So that's another big part of what do you want to be able to say at the end of your life? I was connected to something bigger than me. Most of my clients want to say something around that. Number 4 is relationships, and that can be both romantic and family, friendships. Most of us at the end of our life want to have made, deep, meaningful connections. And then the last one is what I call evolution or self. So again, most of my clients have an urge, have the whispers to continue to move into a higher form of who they are. We've all had those beautiful moments where you feel like the task you're working on or the information that you're reading is so meaningful that you get lost in it, that you spend hours in it, that you would do it for free, that you can't believe there's people who do whatever that topic is, whatever that activity is, for a job. And continuing to explore that evolution and grow that evolution, cultivate that evolution of ourself is, again, usually when we feel the most alive. And so I often encourage my clients to add an element about the evolution of themselves, the focus on themselves for continued growth, because again, that is when we can continue to move into that beautiful place of what we were meant to be. And that can change throughout our lives. I certainly have evolved even, the focus areas that I've come up with as I continue to update my plans and my goals. But there's a goal to at the end of my life that I was a person who continued to evolve and grow and move into the next iteration of myself. Because again, I believe that is when we feel most alive. If we look back on our lives, oftentimes our greatest accomplishments came from the evolution that we found in ourselves through a process to reach a goal. So again, these are the 5 areas that my clients usually have something around. These are the 5 areas I create for myself. And so I created my 5 areas several years ago. And then I created the workback plan that I was talking about at the top of the video. And that workback plan helps to give my brain milestones for what we're going after based on sort of mile markers throughout my life. And again, in the process that I teach, we work backwards, which most processes work forward, but working backwards, starting with the end, creating a workback plan, working backwards, then our higher brains stay turned on and they can give you the answers that you don't even know where they came from, but they're all rolling around in that beautiful higher brain that we just don't access very often. We're on autopilot, most of us, 90% of the time, in habitual behaviors, habitual thoughts, habitual belief systems, many of which do not serve us, and the vast majority of which we don't even realize we're thinking. So we want to, again, access that beautiful higher place. And the way that we do that is by working backwards. So we create milestones to have goalposts for what we're working toward at different points in our life. And since we're starting with life outcomes, sort of the end of our life, I usually recommend to my clients that they work backwards. And this is my process for my own life, in increments of a pretty big chunk of years. So it could be 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, as you start, depending on what age you are, you want to start working backwards and create some mile markers. And eventually you'll get back to 1 year. And 1 year is where we are right now. We're at the beginning of a new year. And so I am looking at my mile markers, seeing if they still feel aligned to where I want to go. And then I start to update the year mile marker that I have. And as part of that year mile marker, then I will create some 30-day mini goals. And this is the part of my process that is more fluid. Sort of the year ahead is, we have a goal for the year ahead based on the workback plan. But I find for myself and with my clients that as you continue to move toward the goal, you'll have learnings, you'll have epiphanies, and the goal might evolve a little bit. The goal might morph into a little bit of something else. And sometimes that can be, I started down this path and I realized that's not where I want to go. Or it could be, this is actually a bigger goal than I anticipated. And so I want to break it down into smaller pieces. That's where the mini goal can really help you with breaking it down, because we tend to, again, as I said earlier on, take on these massive, inspirational, huge goals at the beginning of the process, for many of us, the new year. And then we hit some roadblocks and we start to back off from that. So if we can create a mini goal, then we can start to get some success. And then that'll lead us to the next mini goal, the next mini goal. And then eventually you've hit your year goal. So again, I always think of this, the outcomes, process and mile markers and workback plan as a living thing. So the idea is that, generally speaking, for most of my clients, their outcomes stay the same. Again, if you're thinking about the end of your life, you're thinking sort of high level about what you want to say, those tend to stay constant. But again, as you work to the next mile marker, then you might want to evolve some of those goals for the next year. Again, as you maybe get some more information, as you get some success in the 30-day mini goals. So again, we'll spend a lot more time on that in the next video, but I just wanted to walk you through how I create these outcomes, and then encourage you to, think about, if I was going to say, something about, let's just say health, for example. I was healthy, active, and strong at the end of my life. What would I have had to be doing between the end of my life and 5 years before the end of my life, 20 years before the end of my life? What would I have had to be doing between then and the end of my life to be able to say I was healthy, active, and strong until the end of my life? And again, your brain will start to give you the answers. It's a magical process. And again, it's a living thing, so it'll continue to come to you. I just encourage you to write down, what comes to you initially, continue to look at it again, see what comes up next time. Oftentimes with my clients, they'll create their outcomes, and they might have a mile marker for some at certain years, but not a mile marker for other at certain years. No problem. I promise they will continue to come to you as you continue to uncover and spend more time, again, in that beautiful higher brain where all of that goodness, long-term interest, magic live. So I hope that you will take some time this week to think about, what do I want to say at the end of my life? And if I wanted to be able to say those things, what would I have to go after along the way? How would I close the gap between the mile marker and the next mile marker down the list? So again, if I wanted to be able to say something at the end of my life, what was I doing 5 years before? What was I doing 10 years before? What was I doing 20 years before? And eventually get down to the next year. So what would I need to be doing in the next year to, again, hit the next mile marker that comes up? If you would like a worksheet that goes along with this process, sign up for my weekly email. There is a link in this post. I would love to share that with you to help you continue to walk through that process. And again, if you would like to learn more about the mini goals, stay tuned next week when I will be walking you through how to create success and quick wins using the mini goal process. In the meantime, Happy New Year. Stay safe and well. You know that I'm cheering you on to the life and career that you imagine. Take care.